got a couple of regrets from McKaylee and Sue Ellen. So I think we're all that's going to be here. So let's get the meeting going. So, so first item is approval of the agenda. We have a motion. Any comments? Got a motion from Rebecca, seconder. Glenn, all in favor?
Aye.
All done. Adoption of the minutes. Motion.
Yep.
Okay. And so Carla, and then seconded by Glenn. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Looks like we're done there. Public comments. I don't think we have any people from the public zooming in. So let's go on. Committee reports from, oh, hold it. I jumped way ahead of myself. Business arising from minutes, and that's Carla about the dog leashing at Grafton Lake.
Thanks, Phil. Oh, I didn't realize. Are there no attachments here? Okay. I guess I'm just going to share my screen to show you the new map. I thought this was attached to the agenda, and I didn't realize it wasn't. So, just give me a second here. Sorry for that.
Okay.
So I just wanted to show you that the general dogs must be on a leash signs have been installed around Grafton Lake. You can see them here, and they're installed right below the drinking water protection area signs to kind of bring home that point of we're trying to protect the drinking water by having dogs on a leash. This is where we're planning on installing the bigger sign. It's more of an infographic sign. I think it will be around the same size as these, if not a little bit bigger, because there is quite a bit of text, and I just want to make sure that that's readable.
Yep.
And then this is the infographic sign that we produced. You know, we had this as Art Renison Nature Park, but I think that most people are not very familiar with that name. So we've just gone ahead and said dogs must be on a leash around Grafton Lake. And given some reasons why, we were hoping to kind of make sure that people knew why they should be leashing their dogs around the lake without, you know, trying to encourage that through education rather than telling people about fines and bylaws and that kind of thing. We do have one little blurb here about the bylaw and about what can happen if you do walk your dog off of the leash, because you can get fined $200, and then the bylaw services phone number for any questions or concerns. But basically, we have 3 reasons why we should be leashing our dogs: to protect sensitive ecosystems, to protect drinking water, and to protect our neighbors, with some explanations, who we're protecting, and then some photos associated with some of the species that might need protection in this area. And then where we can walk dogs off of a leash. So we have these separated out into areas of in red, kind of a nice shade of red though. So it's a nice map to look at. So the Wild Coast Nature Refuge and the Ecological Reserve, and is the Islands Trust Conservancy lands. So there's a few of those properties around that don't allow dogs. And then the areas kind of in the amber color, dogs must be on a leash. And then everywhere else in green and other municipal trails, you can walk your dog off of a leash. And we suggest Quarry and Headwaters Parks for less challenging dog walks. We mentioned that there's the off-leash dog park, and then give some information about dogs on beaches. So I just wanted to make sure that that there wasn't any glaring errors on here. And then get any other comments that the group might have.
Great.
About the signage. Oh, and just to mention too, that we will be sharing this over the next, I think, through August and September, in our communications, like in our newsletter, in the undercurrent, and on social media. And then this would be posted on our website, that we do have a page for dogs on Bone Island. And it will be in a bit of a different format so that it's more readable, but we just want to make sure that this map is clearly communicated out, because I think there's a lot of confusion about where you can walk dogs off leash and on leash on the island, and so I just want to make that really clear to people.
I think it's great to finally have a map that
Yeah.
does that, Carla. I think that's a great service.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
excellent, Carla. Is the Metro Van Park at the Cape not shown because it's not officially open, or is it what's best done there at the Cape?
To be honest, I didn't even really think about it. But yeah, I mean, the fact that it's in limbo right now is just, I figure it's best to just leave it off.
I'm
I've
just
got-
wondering about the light yellow color in the map. Should we have that in the legend just so people know what is the pale yellow?
Just remainder areas.
Okay.
So, I guess mostly private property.
Okay.
Well, and it would include road right of ways as well. So what I have said is areas in green and all other municipal trails that are not within an amber area. So because there are quite a few trails like that go along the road here, so they aren't in a park. But there still would be okay for off leash.
But I very much like your approach, making sure that's more educational. I think it's great.
Thanks.
I've got a question about the little dots along the coast. I assume they're the beaches.
Yeah, they are.
Yep, and the little stars.
Yeah, so it's from BOMAP. We have different symbols for the different types, categories of beaches. So the community beaches have a little umbrella. And then the seals are neighborhood beaches, and these, this is like a starfish, and those are for coastal access points. So the more challenging kind of places where you can reach the water, but it's not much of a beach.
So I'd suggest if they're going to be on the map, they should be on the legend.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just a little box that says, and I assume that dogs are not allowed on beaches.
Dogs are allowed on beaches. They just have to be kept under control and within 3 meters of you, and that's except for Tunstall, Sandy, and Bowen Bay beaches, which don't allow dogs just in the months of July and August.
Okay, and that's there in the bottom there. Okay, I see it now.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I just suggest some little letting people know what those symbols mean for the different types of beaches.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fair.
and I like your visuals, the creatures and eggs and things like that. Lots of people don't think about that when their dog's rambling about and jumping into the water, especially. So
Thank you
good.
for providing the photo, Will, of the mallard nest.
No,
So.
no problem. Any other comments from people? Questions? I think this is great, Carla. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for taking a look.
Great. Um, updates. Oh, hold it. Business arising from the meetings. Okay, subcommittee reports, and I guess McKaylee was scheduled for that. So we might have to just skip that until the next meeting. Or any comments from Carla or others?
Well, we put Michaela's name just because we wanted someone from the subcommittee, the climate action subcommittee, to give somewhat of an update. And if there isn't one, then that's totally fine. But I thought that might be a good opener. So if you or Glenn wanted to say anything about that.
Well, I think the update is that we had a brief talk at our and need to talk some more. Anything you can add to that, Glenn?
No, to be honest, my mind's kind of drawing a blank on. I need to go back in the vault to remember what we talked about.
Yeah, well, we were talking about revamping the climate action
Right. Yeah.
and Glenn had some great ideas, and we started that discussion, and I think we've got to get back in the saddle on that because I think we've all been away from it too long and have to. I'll have to arrange a subcommittee meeting soon.
Yeah. Agreed.
So that's the report there, Carla.
Yeah, that's great. So next on the list, there was a staff update as well for about grant funding in terms of opportunities and applications that we already have in progress that are kind of closely related to climate adaptation. I put a link there for grant funding, the climate action. People from the province have been sharing that around. So there is quite a bit of grant funding available for climate adaptation currently. When I did come to one of the subcommittee meetings to talk about the disaster risk reduction and climate adaptation grant from UBCM. That's part of their emergency preparedness fund. And I think we talked a little bit about that in this committee before. And we talked about different types of projects we might be able to use the funding for and what our priorities might be. And I think a lot of the conversation was centered around water. When I spoke with other staff members internally, we realized that we had a really good project that we could apply for right away. The funding is, there's quite a bit of funding. It's 100% grant funding, which is really, really great. And they've had so you can apply in March or in October each year. So for the past couple of years, and I think in the next couple of years, they will continue to offer this funding. So we realized that we had a good project. Actually, Urban Systems is working on redesigning some of our culverts. And so they've been doing that work for some of the more high risk culverts and doing some modeling in terms of how the climate might affect those those culverts and redesigning them because we realized a lot of them are undersized for the 1 in 100 or 1 in 200 year flood events. So we decided to apply for that grant funding to do the design work for all of the culverts on the island because we know that there's a lot of them that are requiring repair in the coming years. And then if we get that work done, we can apply again for further funding for this structural activities stream, which is up to $5 million. So eventually we could maybe actually get that culvert work done with the same grant funding. So we haven't heard back about that yet, but we think our chances are pretty good. So that's what we've applied for now. We also put an application in with the Watershed Security Fund for a Grafton Lake Watershed Management Plan. So I know that we talked a lot about Grafton Lake in the last climate adaptation subcommittee meeting. And this funding opportunity popped up. Thank you to Glenn for sending it to me. I had heard about it the year before and hadn't heard anything since. And then they opened it for just a really short time, less than a month. So we put an application together pretty quickly. It's been on the council's strategic plan to do a Grafton Lake management plan. And I think that the way that we've tried to apply for this funding is that it would be a really wholesome plan where we're looking at like assessing the whole watershed, looking at the different values and threats, water quality, water quantity, and then some of the climate risks and our management goals and strategies to achieve those goals. So that's another one that's in progress. And then, so I think for now, we've got some things on the go. I'm not necessarily keen on taking advantage of any of these other funding opportunities until we see if we've got this funding coming our way, because I think staff will be really busy with those projects if that happens. I was really keen on trying to work on climate risk assessments because we know that that's going to be a requirement soon with the Emergency and Disaster Management Act that came into effect late 2023. So we can see that there's like a lot more work happening and with climate risk assessments at the provincial level. There's been a lot of work happening. And then at the regional level, we've had these Metro Vancouver maps that have just come out, the multi-hazard mapping project, which includes Bowen Island. So that's great that some of that foundational work has been done. I think at the local level, I don't know if we're at a point where we're ready to do that work. I mean, we could, but for me, the province has promised that they will be putting out more guidance on those later this year. And I am happy to wait for that guidance.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I really like the idea of waiting and until the details are there. I had a quick look at the Metro Vancouver document, and I'm thinking it's really coarse. At least the mapping that I've looked at is really coarse for Bowen, and so that I'm thinking that it's kind of like a model for what the components that we should be looking at on Bowen at a tighter focus. So I'm thinking that more of that information coming from the province on guidance would be very useful, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel to do a good project. Any other comments from people?
Carla, have you heard any update on Islands Trust? They were doing that aquifer assessment, and last year they presented some information on Bowen Island that they've done, but they hadn't released anything. It seems like we're still waiting. Have you heard anything?
No, I haven't. And I have heard back from William Scholba, is the gentleman who's working on that for Islands Trust. And I've emailed him a couple times asking him for copies of the reports, and I think they're not quite ready yet. I remember that when they did that, the webinar and the presentation to council, that some of the tool that they were developing was still in beta mode. So I'm not sure if it's, maybe they're have had issues with getting that up and running, but he said he would be happy to work on that more with us in the future. So that he would be keeping in touch.
Yeah.
And we do have a lever here too with Councillor Fast too. So I think she can probably get maybe some more inside information that would be useful to us. Like on when it's going to be released, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to mention, Carla, about the management plan for Grafton Lake, I'm hoping that a component will be managing and maintaining biodiversity. I know Billy Gowans did a report on the biology of the lake, and so hopefully that will be part of the focus. There is maintaining biodiversity, not just looking at it as a water tank.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the values that we will be assessing. Definitely. And there's going to be lots of I think there'll be a lot of public engagement associated with the management plan when it gets done.
Okay, thanks, Carla. And any other comments and questions for Carla? All right, so let's move on to updates. And so staff update, Carla, you're on again.
Here we go. So I think I've given you a lot of what an update would consist of already, just with those grant applications. And I wanted to mention as well that we just posted the LGCAAC survey today on our website. So that's the local government climate action program. We complete a survey each year and we receive funding from the provincial government in exchange for doing that. It used to be the CAREP funding, which was the Climate Action Revenue Incentive Program, and so we're talking about that later in terms of the grants, the grant program that we started through that funding. So that's done. We're moving forward with the energy step code, step 4, and the zero carbon step code, step 1 in January 2025. That's still on the go. And I attended the local government climate action forum a few weeks ago, which was really interesting. So I heard about a lot of work that other communities are doing. And that's pretty much it for me.
Great. So just a question about what the other communities are doing. Are you seeing any good ideas to steal and use for us?
So not a ton. Unfortunately, the climate action forum that I went to is geared more towards larger communities because of where we are. So they have another one that's like in Vernon, I think later in the year, but I didn't want to travel that far. So I went to the one that was right in Vancouver. It was really interesting, but a lot of people are working on like benchmarking and reporting for larger buildings, which we just don't have. I did see there were a lot of presentations from BC Hydro and what else? Oh, and but I did see a really interesting presentation from the Squamish Nation. So they've just completed their climate legacy strategy, and it was really interesting. It was really great how they went about it, and they had a lot of community involvement with their strategy, and it's interesting their approach, where they like to have community overseers to really keep them accountable and keep them on track, and they have a lot of really cool programs coming up. So doing some interesting work there.
We'll keep an eye on them then.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. And our council and Islands Trust update. I've just got to stop something from happening here as okay, now I can scroll. So Councillor Fast is not available, so I guess we'll have to wait for the next meeting for that. And new business, the sustainable community grants that Carla alluded to. And so, Carla, it's the Carla show today.
Well, I can speak to the other. Okay, I'm going to speak to part of this, and then maybe someone else who is on the subcommittee wants to speak to the grant applications. But what I'm going to speak to is just the second part of the recommendation that that we should recommend to council that we continue the grant program. So again, I'm just going to repeat exactly what I said before. So we had the carrot funding before, and we created this grant program because we were getting the carrot funding, and that was about $4,000 a year. And we wanted to reinvest that money into the community for community climate action projects. And so we've been doing that for the last couple of years. We don't always get a ton of applications for the program, but I think, as long as we're getting the word out, that we could get more, and we have supported some really valuable projects in the past. So I really like this grant program. I would like it to keep going, and because we have been getting the LGCAP funding, and that has been stable for the last 2 years, and then this year they've actually given us this year and the next 2 years of funding, so it's 5 years worth of funding, and it's at a more significant amount that is really great because we can do larger projects with that funding, larger municipal projects. But I would like to continue to invest in community climate action projects if we can. So I'd like to recommend to council that we keep funding these projects for up to a total of $4,000 annually.
Yep. Thoughts from committee members? Rebecca?
Yep, I agree. I think it's a good suggestion.
Jeff?
Yep, nothing beyond that. Agreed.
Glenn?
No, that's all good. Yeah.
Yep, I think it's a great idea. Lots of good things come out of community action, so I'm all for it. So I think I don't know if we have to vote on that or not. I usually just look at Steph, and she nods or shakes her head. So
there is a recommendation there that's been prepared by staff. So I think if it's a recommendation to council from this committee, it would be helpful to have it in a recommendation.
Yep. Shall we vote on that recommendation? I suggest
yeah. It's the second one.
Yep. Second one.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, just reading that one. Make sure I got that. Yeah.
That work for you, Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely. I would move that if that's what we're looking for right now.
The seconder? Rebecca, and all in favor? It's unanimous. All right, so that one's done. Now we've got the, do we have a committee member, a subcommittee member that could talk about those two applications?
I can, if you like, Will.
Sure.
Okay, I think they're pretty self-explanatory. We had 2 applications. They're both included in the package, both, I think, good fits for the criteria for the fund. And so the recommendation of the subcommittee is to support both. There wasn't really too much discussion beyond that because they were both good applications and a pretty obvious fit. So I don't really have anything more to say beyond that. We did have a bit of a conversation about how it would be nice after local organizations receive funding from us to invite them back to talk about how the money was spent, and an update on their projects. And that was, I think, that's kind of it.
Okay, thank you. I've got to make a full disclosure about Jeff and I before we are on the technical advisory group for the Wild Coast Nature Reserve. But I will say that we have had no part in the forming this application. We get advice about how to manage the nature in the site, but I just thought I'd bring that up to make it clear to the committee and the public that we have a connection, but I think we're at a safe distance from this grant application, and we will not benefit from that grant. I guess everybody's had a look at those applications. Any comments from any of the committee? Okay, the only comments I've got is that the form that I got as the attachment for the second one, the non-nature sanctuary one, some of the text in the boxes went below the box, and I couldn't read what was in the full comment, the full section several times. But what I was seeing, it was looking that they know what they're doing and are on top of things. And I know the committee has looked at it in detail, so I've got total confidence in the committee. So I'm going to make the motion that we recommend to council that those two grants go forward. Do we have a seconder? Carla, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. I think that's done.
Well,
Yeah. Thank you to those two organizations for stepping forward. That's great.
I just have one question that I had raised in the subcommittee meeting around unspent funds, and I wonder maybe Carla, if you could provide some clarification. So I think we have an example from even last year where we granted we approved an application, but the funds were not spent because the project didn't take off in the way that the applicant, I think, hoped that it would. And I just wanted to clarify, Carla, what happens then to those funds? Because I realized that I wasn't really sure.
I'm not even sure if I can give you a really clear answer to that. The reason that we've been able to program for several years after the CARET funding or the CARET program was canceled was because we hadn't spent all of the funds. We have a climate action reserve, and so the CARET funding and the LGCAP funding have gone into that reserve, but nothing was ever identified necessarily as these are the funds for the grant. I've just kind of been keeping track in my head that we should be able to grant a bit more money, and then make sure that that's okay with the CFO, and she says okay, kind of thing. So that's what I was thinking for, and that is actually part of the reason that we had funds to allocate this year, was because last year the funds didn't get spent. So I think with this recommendation that we've made to council, we can be, we can definitely spend up to $4,000 annually, but I don't know if we would necessarily carry that over year to year.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wondered. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for, any more comments there? Glenn,
Just a new topic when we're ready, if
okay,
not on this current topic, but
okay, I'll find that, well, we're right at, information items, so Glenn, why don't we, squeeze your new topic in?
sure. Just throwing it out there as whether anybody else is thinking about it, or Carly, you may understand the history more around tree cutting. There's a lot of free will on the island to clear land and trap land. There's a few recent examples in my neck of the woods that I feel that could have been better controlled. So I just thought I'd throw it out there as a topic on whether or not there's interest in considering. I'm sure it has been considered in the past. I know it's a sensitive topic, but I just wonder about exploring it.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to have Councillor Fast in on this discussion, because I know she's been working on things in this area.
Okay.
And isn't there a new land? Oh, I can't remember the name of the bylaw that does make it harder for someone just to wade in and scalp the property. Land alteration bylaws or something like that.
The site alteration bylaw.
Site alteration.
Okay.
And Carla, can you speak to that? I just don't know it in any detail, and maybe we'll have to wait for Councillor Fast to go in on that too, if you wish.
Sure. I'm not sure how much I can say about that. So the site alteration bylaw was passed last year or the year before. And it was supposed to, the intention, I think, was to capture some of that land clearing that happens before any permits are taken out, so that we have some kind of measure of control over, when people are planning on doing a subdivision and they don't need a development permit or a building permit, when those large site clearing activities are happening, then at least they have some kind of a review. And the trigger for getting a site alteration permit is when you're moving a certain amount of materials around. So when you're excavating, basically. So I know that the intention was to capture some tree removal as well, but I don't know that it's achieving that. I think that maybe there has been some consideration to tree protection bylaws in the past, but I don't think there's been much appetite for that within the community or politically. So, excuse me. Sorry, I feel like a frog in my throat.
From Grafton Lake, hopefully.
Excuse me. So I don't know, it's something that I hope that we would address in the future. But it's a difficult one.
It is, yeah.
And it's one that we can approach in a lot of different ways. Is it something that we want to protect? Do we want to protect big old trees? Are we just looking at really big tree clearing activities or individual trees, that kind of thing? There's a lot of questions you'd have to answer.
For sure, I appreciate there's lots of nuances, and I'm not suggesting that we would want to go the city of Vancouver route, but it's, do we continue to just be blind to the topic, or do we want to at least explore it and discuss?
I think exploring and discussing is going to be very useful.
Yeah.
Glenn. So I think
I think that's the start point, is just,
so I think maybe next meeting, I will ask Steph to give us some time for that, to start that discussion and the exploration. I think maybe I'll ask all committee members if they have time to look for models in other communities that they like, that could be applicable to Bowen. By the way, I'm just going to point out that Sophie has put in a link to the site alteration bylaw in the chat, so we can, that's our start. So we'll have a look at that, and that could be the basis for the start of our discussion as a committee.
I would also just mention that there's the conservation development policy as well, which is based on the premise that nature needs half. So I don't know that there's hopefully, I think that planning staff would, for anyone who's looking for a rezoning or a subdivision, I think that planning staff would direct people towards that. But I think that sometimes land clearing happens before any discussions with planning staff sometimes. So, there needs to be a trigger for that, I guess.
Might have to be community complaint or something like that.
Mm.
All right. So I think that's a good start. Thank you, Glenn.
oh,
And so we've got a bunch of information items here. So I think that's, Steph has always said, that's just good reading for us in our copious spare time. And we come up to the question period, and if there's any person lurking in the on the Zoom that would like to ask questions about or clarification of what we've been discussing, now's the time.
Yeah, I don't see anyone in the Zoom here.
Okay. And so next meeting, it will be determined in the future. And so it's time to adjourn, unless anybody has any other item we'd like to discuss. All right, we're done. Thanks, everyone.
yeah, great.
It's great seeing everybody, by the way. It's yeah, and I know that Steph had been talking about sometimes having face-to-face meetings, if that comes up, occasionally. I think that would still be great. It's nice to see people in the flesh.
I'd be fine with that.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks everybody, and
Thank you.
thanks for being our Steph today.
It's always a pleasure.
All right. All right. Good night, everyone.